3 years ago, Bitcoin was flying and gold and silver stocks were in the sewer and everyone hated them. And that was when a lot of Bitcoiners said, why don't you just dump that shit? Do you know what I mean? It's like, I don't know. I think we got a couple more puffs in the cigar. I'm not going to give up, Here we are, and it's kind of worked. Right now, I got a lot of, Schiff and all these other gold guys are like, hey, see, the Bitcoin thesis is broken. It's all over, They're attacking Saylor, and I think in 2 years, Saylor's going to have the last laugh. Like Bitcoin's going to wake up and, it's like the Christopher Walken's lion. It's going to wake up and just show everybody who's boss. So what I think few people understand is how when this thing does hit, when this next wave does hit, it's not going to 140, guys. It's going to 250 or 300 or 350. Because there will be so much, there'll be two things happening. There'll be all the shorts who have to cover, or else they're going to get their faces ripped off. And then there'll be a whole new category of long degens who'll come in and who'll lever it and go long it, right? And that's what'll shove it to 400. And then from 400, by the way, it'll correct back to 150.
The global financial system is breaking apart in real time, and the emergency fixes governments have relied on for decades are running out of power. Central banks promised they could control inflation, manage debt levels, and keep markets stable forever. That story is falling apart faster than most people realize. Inflation refuses to stay down, government debt keeps exploding higher, and the tools that worked in 2008 or 2020 cannot solve the problem anymore because the problem has become too massive to fix. Bitcoin was built for this moment, serving as an escape hatch from a monetary system in crisis. While gold and silver reach new highs, Bitcoin remains relatively quiet near $90,000. Some question if Bitcoin's moment has passed or if institutional adoption has altered its path. These doubts are spreading exactly when confidence is needed. Now, Lawrence Lepard explains that the Federal Reserve just restarted money printing without any crisis forcing their hand, which tells you everything about how desperate the situation has become. He warns that this gradual print will not stay gradual for long because the debt keeps growing faster than they can print money to service it. The system needs continuous injections just to survive, and when that fails, Bitcoin will respond ferociously because it always does when debasement accelerates beyond control. Let's watch clips from Lawrence Lepard's interview for actionable insights. Please like, subscribe, and enable notifications to stay informed with our latest analysis. Thanks for joining us again. Enjoy the rest of the video.
There is no crisis, and yet they're trying to be preemptive. They know that if reserves get too tight, they'll have something like the repo blowout in 2019, and they can't have that, and they don't want to have that. They're trying to fight off a crisis by kind of gradually leaking more money in there. I think the problem they're going to have, though, is that the math is just compelling, and I think there are probably three macro signals that I see that say that they're really running out of time, and I'll point them out. Probably macro signal number one is the price of silver. Silver was up 157% last year and just continues to go straight up. And there's a lot to unpack there, but we'll just leave it at that. The other point is the price of gold, which is very similar. It hasn't gone up as much, but it's up 50% plus last year. And then the third item is, and I kind of continually retweet this every morning, is the Japanese 10-year bond. Japan has been a source of a lot of the liquidity in the United States and really all over the world as a result of their carry trade, which was driven by their low interest rates. And interest rates in Japan kind of look like a chart of the price of silver. The 10-year just kind of goes, it's up and to the right in a very steep fashion. So to me, there's some clues, not certainties, but clues that things are breaking and they need to print more money. And as we see, they just started printing more money. So centrally, a lot of things are driving it. But I would say that the two biggest drivers are, the dollar losing its status as the world's reserve asset, not necessarily currency, but asset. People used to say, since 2014, net treasury bills held by foreigners have been flat to down. People just don't trust the dollar anymore. They can see what we all can see. So that's part of it. And then, the Chinese and others, they've stood up the Shanghai Gold Exchange, and the volumes there are huge. And, you've now got China trading with Saudi Arabia. And if Saudi Arabia ends up with too many yuan and they don't want it, they can't buy goods from China for it, they just convert it into gold. In the olden days, with the petrodollar, they would have converted that excess into US dollars. And so, so you've got nation states going for gold as a neutral reserve asset. That's part number one. You've also got central banks realizing the problem, and central bank purchases have been growing, and they're large and steadily growing. And you've got a third issue that it kind of falls into a little bit of the conspiracy theory world, but I would consider, we all know that a lot of conspiracy theories have kind of become conspiracy facts, and uh, and that is kind of the paper markets that have manipulated these things. I mean, the United States and others for years and years, and I know this, I believe this. There's absolutely conclusive evidence if you go to the GAD site or a lot of other places to show it that they've suppressed the precious metals prices because they know that doing so helps their inflation numbers look better. And, they've done it by selling paper gold and paper silver. And you can do that as long as buyers are willing to accept paper gold and paper silver. And up until more recently, that's been the case. I think that these people who ask me, am I too late? I say to them, it's not a trade. I mean, they call it the debasement trade. It's not a trade. It's a trend. It's a multi-year trend. And I don't know what the top is. And will there be corrections? Sure. There'll be corrections in all of these assets, but I think the trend in all sound money assets, silver, gold, Bitcoin, is up and to the right strongly. Should I sell some of my gold and silver? I think, well, where would I put it? Now it's interesting in my case because I've got assets in both of these camps. As you know, one of the hardest things I've had to do in this whole goddamn sound money world is, I got the Bitcoiners, criticizing me for being a boomer with rocks. And I got the rocks guys, criticizing me for believing in magic internet money. And I get all these trolls on Twitter. Trust me, nuts. 3 years ago, Bitcoin was flying and gold and silver stocks were in the sewer and everyone hated them. And that was when a lot of Bitcoiners said, why don't you just dump that shit? Do you know what I mean? It's like, I don't know. I think we got a couple more puffs in the cigar. I'm not going to give up, and here we are. And it's kind of worked. And right now I got a lot of, Schiff and all these other gold guys are like, hey, see, the Bitcoin thesis is broken. It's all over, It hasn't correlated. We got 5 years of flat performance. I mean, Luke Gromen, who I love and think is brilliant, and I've learned a ton from. Even he kind of backed away from it. Oh, I don't know. Maybe he lightened up, and I'm just like, gosh, guys, to me that just feels like this New York Times piece, right? The total cheap shot hit piece on Saylor. I mean, to me, that's going to be like the magazine indicator. Inflation is dead, or gold is a pet rock. I mean, the journal published an article, gold is a pet rock, right at the bottom in 2015. I mean, they almost nailed the low price of gold at $1,000. And here we are at 4,500. And so, they're attacking Saylor. And I think in 2 years, Saylor's going to have the last laugh. And I think Bitcoin's going to wake up and, it's like the Christopher Walken's lion. It's going to wake up and just show everybody who's boss. So I'm very sanguine about it, but that's because I've been at this for a long, long time. And I've seen these psychological swings occur, and it's just like same old, same old. So you're hoping it'll go to 50? And by the way, it might go to 50. It might go to 60. I mean, I have that in my model. My partner and I talk about this a lot. We have it as about a 30% chance that we're not done with this Bitcoin correction. And there's one more cleansing flush sometime in the next 3 months before the real big print comes. But I think that, as I mapped out earlier, I do think that big print's on deck. And I do think that when it comes, Bitcoin will respond, and it will respond ferociously. I mean, Fred Krueger wrote a really good book, which I recommend a lot, called Bitcoin 1 Million. And in that book, he had a very interesting statistic, which is that from 18 to 24, Bitcoin went up 7 or 8x. You missed the 10 best days, you didn't make any money. I mean, so how do you time this asset? And so it's a classic to me because as you're, I thought your last interview with Saylor was really great. And my take is he was just having a bad day. And I think he was a little hard on you unnecessarily. I'm not sure I think you guys were kind of talking past each other because he's right that anyone buying Bitcoin we should support. But you are right that not all of these, Bitcoin treasury companies are going to make it. Some of them were pretty poorly run, to be fair. He said, look, if it turns around and they start printing like crazy and the print comes and it goes to 110 or 115 and I got to buy it back slightly higher, fine. I'll do that. Look, everybody manages their own money in their own way. And, it's not a religion. It's not like, all you're doing is you're making probability-based bets. And he's been so damn right about so many things.
Lepard explains that gold and silver are screaming warnings right now, and Bitcoin is sitting in the exact same position it was in during 2020 before it exploded. Silver jumped 157% last year and currently sits around $103. Gold hit new all-time highs above $4,900 and refuses to pull back. These moves represent central banks and institutions demanding physical metal instead of paper contracts because they no longer trust the system. But Bitcoin has not moved yet, and that is creating doubt among people who do not understand the pattern. He compares the current setup directly to 2020. Gold ran first while Bitcoin sat flat between $7,000 and $10,000 for months. People questioned whether Bitcoin was broken, whether it would ever move again, whether the thesis was dead. Then Bitcoin woke up that fall and went from $10,000 to $60,000 in 6 months. That is a 6 times move in half a year. The same pattern is repeating right now. Gold is moving first, Bitcoin is consolidating, and when the big print arrives, Bitcoin will go from $90,000 to $270,000 or higher.
Another really good guy I respect is Michael Oliver. He's not a Bitcoin fan, but he's a very good technical analyst. And his technical models show it going to 60,000 as well. If you kind of look at it in Elliott wave terms, the first wave down was an A round, then to 80. It bounced back up here into the 90s. That's a B. And then the C should take it below the 80. I'm not sure we get to 60. 70s probably seems likely. But, I bought some MicroStrategy yesterday. I want to own a lot of MicroStrategy. I've got some cash from having sold some silver stocks. And so I'm going to just kind of dollar cost average MicroStrategy for the next 6 months. Because I know that at 170, if Bitcoin goes to 50 or 60, strategy is going to 110. But, you can't, that's the thing. You can't get the absolute tops and the absolute bottoms. And that's what Rothschild said. You can't be a pig, right? When things are on the cheap side of the board, you buy them. And when things are on the expensive side of the board, you sell them. And by the way, that's why I've been selling a little bit of silver. I believe in a higher power. So I think this higher power sent us Bitcoin. And I think that, Bitcoin's going to smash this system, whether they like it or not. And the only real issue is on what time scale. And, I kind of think that all this, fourth turnings tend to last between 20 and 30 years. This one started in '08. So 2028 is the short end of the line and 2038 is the long end. One of the things that Bitcoin can do that gold never has done, Bitcoin can go up 6x in 6 months, right? And so, when they had a problem with gold, a bad year for them in gold was to go up 20 or 30%. Well, they'd sell into it, create a narrative, drive it back down. And even if they needed to print the money to cover the 20 or 30%, that wasn't a lot of money on a relative to keeping the whole system going basis. When you're short something and it goes up 6x, that's a come to Jesus moment, right? So if you're suppressing it with paper Bitcoin and the price does that. In fact, that's part of what drives it to go up to 6x is the fact that, when we break through this 26, you're going to see people scramble that are on the wrong side of that trade. There's a big part of Wall Street that said, they had a pair trade where they're long the triple Qs and short Bitcoin. And that pair trade has actually worked because the triple Qs have hung in there and Bitcoin has failed. I think it's a stupid trade because I think the triple Qs are overvalued. I think Bitcoin is undervalued. But as long as it works until, they get too far out over their skis and then it reverses. And that's what causes Bitcoin to trade like the wild animal it trades at. And so what I think few people understand is how when this thing does hit, when this next wave does hit, it's not going to 140, guys. It's going to 250 or 300 or 350. Because there will be so much, there'll be two things happening. There'll be all the shorts who have to cover or else they're going to get their faces ripped off. And then there'll be a whole new category of long degens who'll come in and who'll lever it and go long it, right? And that's what'll shove it to 400. And then from 400, by the way, it'll correct back to 150. But it's the nature of a speculative, asset that's being adopted. This is, if you go look at a very long-term price chart of Amazon, which is a similar network-based business, it had multiple, when it had one 90% correction, it had multiple 60, 70, a lot of 40, 50% corrections. Either it's going to take over the world or it's going to die. And right now, Bitcoin's in the, right now we're kind of hearing, it's not, I just saw a tweet this morning from a gold guy. Well, not really looking like digital gold, is it? And I was just kind of like, you wait, okay, just wait, you just relax. It's not a straight line, but I'll take the other side of that bet, and in 2 years we'll see who looks right. So we had to have the ETF, we had to have corporate adoption, we had to have nation state adoption, sovereign wealth fund adoption, and all of those things had to happen, or this asset wouldn't become what we thought it was going to become. So they're all net good. as you know, I'm a real self-sovereignty nut, and I think having control of your coins is critical. But that for people who don't want to do that or can't do that, the 6102 risk, I don't view it as being that large yet. I mean, I think it's one of those things we got to watch. How dystopian does our government get? I mean, let's map it out. So let's say it's now 2028, and sadly, red team loses, blue team wins. And we've got, I don't know, Stephanie Kelton's the Treasury Secretary, and the narrative develops that this great Keynesian monetary system that we've had going for all these years, that's being ruined by these gold and silver and Bitcoin people. And we need to tax that shit at 90%. In fact, we need to go further than that. We need to just seize it, because they're ruining this country. They're ruining the financial system. And so we're going to seize it. And here you go. Here's your cash. Send us your Bitcoin. Well, if you're in an ETF, Fidelity and BlackRock, and they're going to comply with the law and send the Bitcoin in and give you the cash. The cash will buy less the next day, but that's just the way it's going to go down. Same is true with the gold and silver. So, and that's one of the possibilities. I mean, it's one of the reasons why I sincerely feel like we got to make a lot of, and by the way, the other thing that's going to happen with absolute certainty, if you study history, is taxes are going to go up. I mean, we've been lucky to have such a low tax rate environment. I mean, you got to remember when Reagan came in 80, top marginal tax rate in the United States was like 70%. Right? I mean, there's been, and with all this wealth inequality, I mean, you think a blue team in 2028 isn't going to jack taxes on everybody? Of course they are. It's going to be horrible. Which is also another reason why, and I'm not suggesting anybody don't pay their taxes or cheat or any of that kind of crap. I'm just saying that if you own money that's got no counterparty in your own possession, and you lose it in a boating accident, I don't know how they're going to tax it. I mean, it's good luck with that, right?
Lepard's most important warning centers on the mathematical certainty of much larger money printing ahead. He points to a chart tracking Federal Reserve liabilities against an exponential debt growth curve going back to 1960. Every time the Fed's balance sheet dipped below that curve, a crisis followed within months. Right now, the balance sheet sits below the curve again. The only way to close that gap is massive money printing that takes the balance sheet from 6.5 trillion to 10 trillion or higher. And when that happens, Bitcoin will explode. Bitcoin has not moved yet because the big print has not arrived yet. What the Fed is doing now with $40 billion per month is just the gradual print. Lepard believes it will morph into something much larger when the next crisis hits. Every time the Federal Reserve tried to tighten over the past 15 years, something broke. The repo crisis in 2019, the COVID collapse in 2020, and the regional banking crisis in 2023 all followed the same pattern. The next crisis is building right now, and when it hits, Bitcoin will respond violently. Lepard dismisses concerns about Bitcoin's 4-year cycle being broken. Mining supply and halving events are irrelevant now compared to institutional demand and macro liquidity. What matters is whether central banks are printing money and whether traditional finance is breaking down. Both conditions are set up perfectly for Bitcoin's next move higher. The tail risk most people ignore is the Federal Reserve losing control of the 10-year Treasury yield. The yield sits at 4% right now, held in place by basis trade positions 3 times larger than 2019. If the 10-year breaks above 4.5% and runs toward 5%, the Fed will be forced into yield curve control where they buy unlimited bonds. That means printing trillions with no ceiling, and Bitcoin will go parabolic. Lepard addresses concerns about Bitcoin being captured by Wall Street through ETFs. He admits the 6102 risk exists, but believes institutional adoption had to happen for Bitcoin to reach its full potential. Sovereign wealth funds, nation-states, and corporations needed access, and ETFs provided it. Bitcoin becomes unstoppable once it reaches critical mass in the global financial system. His final message is direct. Bitcoin is not broken. The system is breaking exactly as expected, and Bitcoin will respond exactly as it always has when debasement accelerates. The people doubting Bitcoin right now are making the same mistake people made in early 2020 when Bitcoin sat at $7,000. 6 months later, Bitcoin hit $60,000. The big print is coming, and Bitcoin will smash the system whether people believe it or not. Now, do you think Bitcoin will hit $270,000 when the big print arrives, or are we looking at something even bigger than that? Or is this just another hype cycle that will disappoint like the doubters are saying? Please leave your thoughts in the comments below. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe.